Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks. A podcast that thinks chaos isn't a nasty word, but a way of life. It's SiftPop. Welcome to SiftPop Weekly, streaming live most Saturday mornings, or available to download later in your podcast feed. Unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Oh, that's fast. Oh, that's fast.
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and I've been waiting for someone like him, someone to challenge me. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
I probably do mentally. Ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. He sang a song so we could remember it was him. It's TT Sternizzi. Hey, TT.
Hey, I'm glad no one's going to ask what song I sang, so that's good.
I like how you put that out there, just so that we won't. So it's been a hot minute since we've had you on, TT. How has life been? How's stuff going? What's the deal?
Yeah, it's been a crazy time. I guess I have to do a shameless plug for myself, just because as artistic director of the Over the Rhine International Film Festival, we had an amazing year. We had our fourth year of the festival this past July. Had a great time. Brought a lot of filmmakers in, and then literally 2 weeks after the festival, Movie Maker magazine, their new issue comes out, and they have a list of the 25 coolest festivals in the world. And lo and behold, our little festival was one of the 25 coolest.
Yeah, it was. Let's go. Get it.
Yeah.
Nicely
done. In large part, I would like to say it was because, I'm a great artistic director, and, every good thing should come as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
There's a ton of really great work. We have a great team here that I love working with, all my programmers. And we had the real thrill of, again, in 2021, having a closing night film that ended up winning Best Picture, which probably didn't hurt us all that much either. So yeah, we've been kind of riding high off that. We're getting ready. We just opened up submissions, as a matter of fact, this week for 2023. So the whole process starts all over again. We're doing year-round programming as well. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that if you're looking for great film programming, lots of opportunities to, see great films, sit back and enjoy a great panel, maybe see a filmmaker or two along the way here in the Midwest, come to the Queen City. That's the place.
Nice. Very, very cool. I wouldn't undersell also your relationship with SiftPop podcast and getting on that list. I'm sure that was a huge part of the success of the film festival.
Why do you think I'm here now?
That's right. So you know where it's at. Oh yeah. Speaking of film festivals, I do want to give an update on something you may have noticed if you're a SiftPop fan. There was no SiftPop episode in your feed last week. We did record a second Fantastic Fest episode. it was lost due to audio issues. And
No.
one of the most painful things, we did a full review of Triangle of Sadness, as well as Bones and All, and then talked about some of the other stuff that we have seen there. Now, I bring it up not to cause you pain in case that was something you were interested in hearing us talk about, but just to apologize for the gap. However, I am going to see what I can do to do a quick kind of just maybe a Swift that might pop up in your feed at some point just over those movies and what happened at the festival. May just be a little bit more of a just kind of a regular bulletin check-in kind of thing as opposed to full reviews. So we'll see. There may be some of the audio that is salvageable. I may see if I can use some of that. But I did want you to know what happened since there was no SiftPop episode in there this week. So that was kind of a bummer. But overall, had a blast at Fantastic Fest. Saw a lot of great stuff. And excited to have brought that to you guys.
What movie would you say that you are most excited for the rest of the public to see whenever it comes out?
The Menu. No,
That's what I figured.
Question. The Menu is astonishingly good. It's so good. It is such my kind of movie. So yeah, The Menu would be the one that I would say.
You and Ian praised the crap out of it whenever I listened to that episode.
Triangle of Sadness is great too. I really enjoyed Triangle of Sadness. So I would definitely keep that one on your list as well. And I think most people, Marvel's Werewolf by Night is out now, right? Because I enjoyed that a lot more than I expected to as well. So So yeah, that was really fun too.
I was going to save that for next week as my buried treasure, but okay.
Well, there you go. No, go for it. We're not going to talk about it now. It just got mentioned. That's all. It just got mentioned.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the reviews. We've got a couple of movies we want to talk about that just came out, and of course, the best ever challenge and our buried treasure. We'll get to it all, but let's start by talking about Amsterdam. In the 1930s, three friends, a doctor, a nurse, and an attorney, witness a murder, become suspects themselves, and uncover one of the most outrageous plots in North American history. Amsterdam is Christian Bale and, well, you know what? I'm not going to name everybody in this cast because it's pretty much everybody in Hollywood. So we'll get to the pieces we want to talk about, but it's David O. Russell coming back and doing some work. So what did you guys think about Amsterdam? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? TT, kick us off.
It was just okay for me. And I'm going to say that in large part, it's kind of funny because you mentioned that whole cavalcade of stars that make appearances along the way. And again, I just felt like, unfortunately for me, the film was just you waiting for the next all-star appearance. You know, it in a strange way felt sort of disconnected for me because it was just like this shaggy dog with all of this fluffy fur. And again, the fluffy fur was all these people that kept popping up and you're like, oh, I kind of recognize them, or, oh, okay, I see where they're going here.
Yeah.
Whereas unfortunately, by the time you wade through all of that and try to get to the story and the idea of parts of the story actually being true, that felt like an afterthought to me in a way. And I was surprised, mainly because, again, David O. Russell has usually been a much sharper, more focused filmmaker, in my opinion, than he is in this particular moment. And honestly, out of the performances themselves, the only one that really stuck for me in any meaningful way was Christian Bale. And I don't know, I'm continuously amazed by the idea of what he does, because we kind of know going in that he's kind of a method kind of guy. But this is the first time I felt like, even if he's doing all that method stuff, it felt fun. He really kind of dug into this character and the role, and it was oddly pleasurable for me to watch him, because out of everything that was going on, and as unconventional as his character is too, he still felt like more of a center and more of something that I could care about in the story than anyone else or anything else that was happening on screen during most of his runtime.
Andrew, like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
I didn't like it. I did
Okay.
not like it. Maybe high-sided didn't like it, but yeah, I didn't like it. You?
I'm gonna be high side of it was just okay. This is one of those movies where people talk about losing the middle. And there is this idea that every movie that comes out, the general populace now, or even movie criticism, tends to be greatest movie ever, worst movie ever. And this to me is the prime example of why that's not the case. This is not the worst movie ever made. There's a
No.
lot of fun
Mhm.
stuff here. Like you mentioned, Christian Bale's performance, I think is really good. I am astonished by him and how he does roles. Every time I feel like, he becomes someone else, which,
Mhm.
to be that prominent of a movie star and also that good of a character actor is a really fascinating combination. And he's really, really good here. So he's a lot of fun to watch. The plot is interesting. A lot of that has to do with the true story nature of it, and the parts of this that were true fascinate me. So yeah, I had a good time, but it's also not the greatest movie ever made. There's a lot of flaws here. There are big stretches where it's like, what are we doing here? This feels muddled. This feels messy. And I just think it's really important to not lose the middle and to not say, yeah, this movie is just okay. I think it's one of our more important ratings that we can give, even though it doesn't feel like it. And it feels like, that there's so much more interesting when you are passionate about something. And so when you passionately hate something or passionately love something, that it's more interesting. I passionately say this is just okay. And I think that's something that's missing in the discourse.
A
But yeah, I
fervent meh.
yes, a very fervent meh. But yeah, I think for me, the reason I go high side of just okay is the fun. I did have fun through quite a bit of this. And I bought the central, triad or thruple, if you will, of the movie. I bought them together. I thought that was fun. Margot Robbie, John David Washington, and Christian Bale, playing that together. But you're right in the fact that none of the other performances really stood out to me as anything, worth noting, other than maybe Timothy Olyphant, who's completely unrecognizable in this. I thought that was fun.
They made him not handsome.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Difficult job, but they
Yeah,
did it.
yeah.
Nicely done. Other thoughts, TT, from the Just Okay camp?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I completely agree with everything you said about that very idea of yeah,
Mhm.
it's not the greatest, it's not the worst, and unfortunately, we do forget that you're right. There's that whole middle expanse there. There's a range of films that can fall in there, and you're right. This does squarely fit that criteria. I think the
Mhm.
other thing or the other performance that is kind of weirdly triggering for me is actually John David Washington,
Mm.
because I've struggled with the idea of him on screen because he never really pops for me in the way that I expect and I kind of want him to.
Mhm. Sure.
And this is another example of that. He's there and he's fine and serviceable in a way, and it's unfair to always look at him and think, well, yeah, if your dad was in this role, he would have popped. But
Right.
there's a part of that that's true. Like Denzel was just one of those. He's one of those actors who, yes, as soon as he steps into a frame, he commands the frame, but he's not alone. There are a number of actors that do that, and the when you find someone who doesn't, who again is being built up in this way, it's disconcerting because I keep looking at him and I'm thinking if we're looking for like that next Denzel, it's not Denzel's kid. And
Right.
I feel like to a certain extent, he's getting a lot of roles though because he is Denzel's kid, maybe, and there's that expectation that something is gonna happen, and we're
Well, he's
finally
got a
gonna
lot of
see it
his
and
dad
feel
in
it.
him too. Like there are moments where you go, like he'll say something, and I'll be like, "That is exactly how Denzel would have said that." So I think there is that almost nostalgia, which is interesting with kids of celebrities, where
Yeah,
you
yeah.
almost get to carry on your love of their parents through them on the screen in some way. So I think that might have a little bit to do with it too.
It might, but I think in my case now, I've come to recognize that in my head, John Boyega is more Denzel's kid than John David Washington.
I like
Because
it.
every time I see Boyega, I'm like, man, he's got it. Like
Yeah, he
I get it.
pops. Yeah.
I get excited when he pops up on the screen, and it's like, man, that's what I'm looking for. That's kind of that next Denzel thing that you want that he totally has, and again, John David doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Andrew, some more thoughts?
Uh, if I'm going to give any props to this movie, I think that it comes down to set design and costume makeup, because there's some prosthetic work going on in this movie that is really, really good. To have, so many people with scars or wounds or missing eyes or something like that, and then to have it look not only real, those wounds, but to make the prosthetics look like they're from a forgotten time. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the movie. It was probably my favorite part of the movie, and hopefully that doesn't say too much about what I thought of the rest of the movie, because I thought the rest of the movie in all other aspects was lacking. I really did. I thought the story was lacking. It wasn't as investing. And when I say lacking, like Aaron said at the beginning, I don't mean bad. I mean, it's just there's a lot here that's pretty meh. But I guess you could say it became like a straw that broke the camel's back of lackluster. So like the performances outside the triad was a little lacking. It felt like everybody was trying to act as if they were in a different movie. Like I think that Anya Taylor-Joy and Rami Malek are in a completely different movie than like Timothy Olyphant, and I think Michael Shannon and Mike Myers are in a completely different movie than Robert De Niro. Which I'll say this, I did really enjoy Robert De Niro's performance. He has a line towards the end of this movie where he's like, whoever is blanking, and he just nonchalantly, Teddy Roosevelt style, just gets angry. That was probably the highlight of the movie for me. I thought that was really funny.
I don't know. I don't disagree with liking De Niro's performance here. I do disagree with feeling like everybody's in a different movie. I feel like the performances were fairly consistent in tone to each other, and that was one of the things I had fun with. Like the Anya Taylor-Joy performance is, kind of that same over-the-top comedic, like caricature. Everybody in here is a little bit caricature-y, right? Like they're a little bit almost satirical. It almost borders on satirical, right? And Mike Myers and Michael Shannon are kind of in that same way, and even De Niro is in that same way. The comment you're talking about is that kind of bordering on, satirical kind of comment from that, kind of character. So the only person who didn't feel comedically over the top to me was Taylor Swift. For her part of the show, that just kind of felt like a normal performance to me and didn't really stand out amongst the others, but everybody else felt, and maybe Zoe Saldana felt a little bit underperformed as compared to everybody else. But
I forgot she was in the movie.
Well, there you go. There you go. Or Chris Rock. Those, maybe.
Oh yeah, he's in the movie too.
TT, what do you think about the performances in the tone? Who was kind of there?
I think there's a point where I would agree with both of you. Like overall, the tone of it all kind of felt consistent, but I will say that in those individual pairings or individual character moments that do pop up, it feels like there's a whole other story that I might be interested in, maybe if I follow them a little further.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt a little disconnected in that sense, that because in these individual moments, yes, I did kind of care about, De Niro's character and what was going on with him. And yeah, in the same way, I was intrigued by, the brief bit of Taylor Swift that we get. And I didn't really think that I was going to be that interested in it. But overall, none of it really worked because unfortunately, yeah, I'm sitting here listening to you guys talk about it, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, Zoe Saldana's in it," and, "Oh, yeah, Chris Rock's in it," and it's kinda like, at some point, you're like, "Oh, crap, that's right, yeah, those people are there, and I may have enjoyed, like, some of their moments, but there's so many of them that after a while, it's just hard to there's just not enough to hold on to because it's just so much. It's like trying to grab on
Mhm.
a handful of water.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I for one enjoyed all the bird watching stuff. Like that's the kind of stuff in this movie where I'm just like that running gag for whatever reason works for me. And I think there's just so much of it that it's easy to kind of feel hit or miss by the time you get to the end of it. Like some of it hits for you, some of it, misses,
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. Andrew, did you have other negatives you wanted to talk about
Uh,
since you didn't like it?
well, it was it was a lot of little things. So, like I didn't like really the performances all that much. The dialogue, it came across as dialogue and not genuine, conversations. It it was like I'm watching this and I'm like, are they trying to capture a bygone era of how people used to talk? Because if that's the case, it's not coming across as genuine. Or are they just trying to write something funny? In that case, the dialogue just sounds weird and false. Uh, yeah, it felt like a movie trying really hard to be a movie. It was difficult for me to place myself in this world and have it feel believable. And because it didn't really feel believable, I really wasn't all that invested in people's stories. Like,
And maybe
Okay, here's a question, Aaron. What is this movie trying to say?
great question. I was actually just going to talk about that. This is a movie that I think is trying to convey this idea of you have to be continuously alert. That there's because there's a big thing in this, which I don't know that I've really seen a movie capture this time, where it's like, okay, we're ready to move on from World War One. What we're not done, like like this time in between the Great Wars where it's like, okay, time to move on, but maybe not. And so, yeah, it captured that. And I think the point of that is to be like, okay, there's always a place for people to be alert and to be awake to what's going on around them. And so I think that it's using this true story of, this organization within America that was leaning towards the idea of dictatorship and kind of following the patterns of some things that were going on in Europe, specifically at that time in Italy with Mussolini. It's that there was a group of people who thought, hey, this sounds like let's do this with America too. And I use the verb was very knowingly, that it is still something that we deal with. So yeah, I think that's all of that together is what the movie was trying to say. Now, is it coherent and powerful? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it really hits the depth and target that it wants to, but I do think it's there kind of lingering underneath, if that makes sense. That
Okay.
was at least what I saw, when I watch it. But I may be doing a lot of work for the movie too, which I have a tendency to do. So yeah. Well, there was something else that you mentioned, Andrew. I'm trying to remember before you asked that question.
Was it about dialogue or?
No, but that's all right. TT, you got any other thoughts?
Well, my only other thought about this is this feels to me like one of those films. It'd be interesting to have this conversation like a month from now
Mm-hmm.
and see what still sticks with us.
Right.
Because again, I think the question of what is it about, again, I've talked about all of the performances and everybody in there. Like, yeah, I'm honestly really curious because I'm worried now. Maybe not worried. That's not exactly the right way to phrase it. But I'm in my head. I'm kind of like, yeah, like what's going to stand out for me a month from now or 2 months from now if someone were to say, "Hey, did you see Amsterdam?" And
Mm.
that's why for me, I think the only thing that mattered was Christian Bale. Because honestly, I feel like I would probably struggle trying to remember anything else that
Mhm.
was kind of taking place or anyone else that was on the screen. I might be able to throw some names out, but I feel like I could throw other names out just because, yeah, there's so many people in this. Like it doesn't feel like you could come up with a name that wasn't in there to a certain
Mm.
extent, but
Yeah.
it didn't mean that they were meaningful when they showed up. Christian Bale was probably the only meaningful performance that I really got out of the film.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, and I get the feeling that that'll stay with me a month from now, no matter what. The rest
More than
of it,
anything else.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
again that'll be that one drop of water that's still in the palm of my hand, whereas the rest of it is going to be on the ground.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I think this movie its authenticity suffers a little bit because of its predictability. There is an element of this movie where I think it's trying to hide some things from us that are way too clear to try to be hidden. And it also hinders, in my opinion, the ability of the movie to say what it wants to say because it's trying to hold some things back for story reveal, those kind of things. There's a scene where the characters literally they comment on some interesting wall art, and everyone in the theater knows there's something under that interesting wall art, but for some reason the characters don't think, "Hey, let's go look." Just stuff like that where it's like, they're trying to save impact and reveal for later. I think it lets the audience get too far ahead of it in some ways, with the
Mhm.
villains and the plot machinations. So that was kind of my other negative that I wanted to mention. We've got time for one last thing. If either of you have anything else that you want to mention.
There's visuals that go on during the first part of the credits, but nothing worth sticking around for.
Yeah. Yeah. TT, any last thoughts?
um, yeah, I've probably expended all of my thoughts on this
There you go. Forever. Not just for this podcast review, just forever.
forever.
All right. Let us move on then. Let's talk about Don't Worry, Darling. A 1950s housewife living with her husband in a utopian experimental community begins to worry that his glamorous company may be hiding disturbing secrets. Don't Worry, Darling is Olivia Wilde bringing this to us, also in the movie. Florence Pugh and Harry Styles starring, Chris Pine in there as well. This movie has a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff that has gone on that I don't usually follow, but it was so big that I couldn't even keep from hearing all the madness happening behind this one. It also has an unpunctuated title that confuses me because apparently, according to this title, there's something called a worry darling, and we're not supposed to be that. So yes, Andrew, don't worry, darling, whatever
Okay.
that means.
I promise I will not worry, darling.
Yes. So if you ever
It's
catch
funny
me
you say that because
work,
I'm looking down at my notes and I did put the comma in. So
if you ever catch me worry darlinging,
yes.
please stop me and tell me not to. All right. So yes, don't worry, darling. Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Andrew, we'll start with you this time.
Man, I was hoping for those couple extra seconds where I could finally, pin down my thoughts on this movie because they are a plenty. I think I'll go with either high side of okay or low side of liked it. There's
Okay.
so many issues I have with this movie, but there's so many amazing things that go on too. So I'll go right there.
I will say as well that I'm kind of right there with you, Andrew. I think I'm going to go high side of okay again and place this in that important middle again for me. There are some things I like about it, but there are definitely some things that I did not. TT, where are you at? Like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
It was just okay. I'm not gonna high side or low side it or anything else. It was just okay.
All right, well, let's talk about it. Andrew, I want you to go first on this. What are some of the things you enjoyed about Don't Worry, Darling? Or excuse me, Don't Worry, Darling.
Yeah, don't worry, darling. I would say I am very, very impressed with Olivia Wilde and her directorial eye. This is a beautiful movie to look at. Absolutely gorgeous. The striking contrast of the colors being used, the vibrancy of life in the middle of this desert. Like it's like we get a whole bunch of shots of the green lawns and the cars and everything, but in every single one of those shots where you see something beautiful going on, they also in the background you can see the desert. You understand the entire time the confinement of this community. But I think I would never be invited to live there because I am not a model. Only the most gorgeous people in the world apparently are allowed to live in this community, and it's just full of great, beautiful colors. And I'll talk performances later, but that's really the thing. I am really, really impressed with Olivia Wilde's directorial eye.
I agree with that. I do think the movie is really pretty to look at, and there are some choices that are made as well, where there are some really subtle, almost subliminal flashes of stuff that she's doing in this that I think is really interesting. There's some conceptual stuff that she's doing here that is really interesting as well. I will also say at this point, there are some pretty big story turns towards the end that we're not going to spoil here in the main review. I'm open to doing a SIF spoil on this if you guys want to, because it might add to some of the conversation, but we can also kind of talk around it, I think. But yeah, it is really beautiful. I also think that Florence Pugh is in now for me that level of actor where I just know they're going to make every project better. Like if she is in it, like Charlize is in this level for me, where it could be like the silliest sci-fi, whatever, and Charlize is in it. I'm like, let's go. Like she just makes everything better. Florence ups this movie 2 levels, in my opinion. I think she's so good in this, and really, really enjoyed her performance. TT, what are some of your thoughts?
I'm totally in with both of you on the look and feel of it. I think, Olivia Wilde definitely has an eye for this period and this material. And the funny thing is, Andrew, you talked about, everybody looking like models. And it's true within that community that they do, but I also feel like that's like sharp casting too, because it feels like each of these performers was chosen in some way because they felt like they were of that period. And in particular, I would say, I'm not getting into the actual performances themselves, but Harry Styles looks like a guy from that period. And I spent a lot of time watching the film just kind of thinking, that almost feels like stunt casting in a way, because he did. He looked like he fit in that world. Chris Pine, with the way that he is kind of styled for the film, he looks like he's part of that period. And again, Florence, I mean, she feels like she could work anywhere, anytime. But as a whole, when you put everyone together, they kind of heighten that sense, that visual sense of what you're getting, which I was really impressed with. That's kind of a fascinating combination of things that has to come together, and you have to be able to see that. And Olivia and whoever she worked with on the casting side, they knew this world and they knew how to populate that world, which was really fascinating.
I think that Nick Kroll is a very attractive man, but I don't know that I would call him like model attractive. So I do think there were some characters or actors in here that wouldn't necessarily be somebody you would think you would see on a runway or something like that. But I think what you're speaking to is how well the movie contextualizes everything. So even Nick Kroll or some of the others, even though, you know, they may not be models or whatever, they feel like models because the movie contextualizes their presence in such a, you know, that 50s aesthetic, right? Like that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that slick suit, you know, bright colors aesthetic. So, so yeah, I totally understand what you guys are saying in that regard. Andrew, more thoughts?
Going back to, I think this movie deals with tension in such a beautiful way that. I'll go ahead and just say this real quick. The end of this movie almost ruins the entire thing for me. Yeah, I hate
Okay.
I hate the ending of this movie so much that it's frustrating on a level. Like if it wasn't for the
Conceptually or execution? Or both? More
execution.
execution than concept. Okay.
Yeah, because there are so many unanswered questions of things that are done in this movie that are either a rushed
And questions that
explanation.
need answers. Like
Yeah,
questions that like that don't make any sense unless you give me an answer that helps my brain figure out. Like,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. But leading up to this point, I think that the way I would categorize it is 5% setting up, exposition, letting everybody know, where we are, and then 97% tension, or 93% tension, and then 2% ending. It's like 5 minutes. Here's your ending, blah, and it just throws up all this nonsensical nature to you.
Mm.
When I say nonsensical, like Aaron and I said, it makes like sense. It's easy to follow, but like once the movie's over, you're like, well, this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. And like, if they would have just spent, if this was a 3-hour movie, I would have been okay with it. And if they had, taken the time to really flesh out this ending and have it be sensical, it's so frustrating. That's the only thing keeping me from loving this movie.
Well, it sounds like we will definitely do a SIF spoil then, so you can get a little more detailed in that, because I think there are some things about the ending that are definitely worth talking about. So we will record a separate SIF spoil when we're done here.
Yeah.
And you guys can listen to that. It should be in your feed if you've seen the movie, or if you haven't and you just want to be confused, you can listen to it as well. TT, more thoughts?
Yeah. Kind of get into, it's in part the ending, but it's the bigger picture for me is this notion that as I was sitting there watching it, and you go into it expecting the whole Stepford Wives kind of world that you're given, and knowing that there's something not quite right behind it all. About halfway through, I was kind of like, okay, this is like the Stepford Wives if the Wachowskis were in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that in both the best sense and the worst sense. I am a huge fan of the idea of the Matrix trilogy. I have real issues though in terms of how some of those elements may have actually played out, not the visual execution of it, because yes, the sci-fi world and everything that happened in the fighting was all fun and interesting in its own way, but once you move past that layer to really kind of looking at the philosophical framework of the world and what they gave us, there's a great starting point there, but it felt like they weren't quite sure where they wanted to end up. And I think that's the same kind of issue that I have with Don't Worry, Darling. I think it on a certain level, we've all talked about how great it looks and how that aesthetic has been set up. But then moving beneath that and digging deeper into that world, it yeah, you end up with more questions and more, points where you're kind of like, okay, that doesn't quite work for me. Like, why is this not working? Why wasn't this thought out a little bit more clearly and cleanly? And yeah, by the time you get to the end where it is that dump at the end, it's just kind of like, no, you've lost me, because again, I've gotten further and it feels like there's something rotten by the time you get to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was great enough and it looked great and it felt great for a while. That I feel like you kind of go with the good feelings of that, even as you're sliding into the ride and the questions that emerge in the ride.
Yeah. I may be on an island on this negative for me. I'm not sure. I didn't like Harry Styles' performance. I didn't buy it, and I don't know. Like, I can't exactly put my finger on it. It may be that Florence Pugh was kind of acting circles around him. That might be just the problem of, standing next to the most handsome man in school or whatever. Like there's by relation, maybe it just doesn't feel as good. But during the scenes when he was doing capital A acting, it felt like I'm an actor to me. I didn't believe the character as much, and I'm not exactly sure why that was. But I'm assuming by the blank stares that nobody else felt that way. So
Yeah, sorry, but you're on an island on that one. I thought he was brilliant.
Anything else we want to talk about, positive or negative?
For me, and I don't know if this is the same message you got from the movie, Aaron, but I love this message of seeing isn't always believing. That it's okay, and not only okay, but sometimes encouraged to question, to not have your life be dictated to you, for you to try and find the truth behind the curtain. This because it's the sense of community and everything. But what am I trying to say? I think that this movie really tackles in what it should have ended tackling was not to. It's okay to be a part of a community, but that doesn't mean you have to stop being an individual. And that's something that I don't see a lot in movies, and I really, really appreciated that. And like I said, I think it does a good enough job, but I wish they would have done maybe just a little bit more of trying to tackle that.
There are two movie comps that immediately came not to mind for me, both of which I should probably wait till the SIF spoil to talk about, just because I think they reveal a little too much. However, I will say this, Andrew, and I will do a much more deeper dive into theme and subject when we get into the SIF spoil. But I will say this: I loved the message of this movie, and the only issue I had with the message is it's one we've seen many, many times before, and that's okay. It's still needed, but there's a real. You mentioned like individualism, community, that's fine, but specifically in relation to gender politics, there's some stuff going on here that is very specific, and the movie, you can tell that there is a metaphor underlaid here that is really important and I think meaningful as we think of gender and relationship to sexism and those kind of things.
But isn't that all rushed?
It is a little rushed. It is absolutely a little rushed. And again, it's a little on the nose, and that doesn't bother me as much as it bothers some people. But because I think it's important, and I think it's okay to be a little on the nose sometimes. But yeah, I will talk about that more in the SIP spoil for sure.
Yeah, there was no subtext whenever we're talking about that aspect of the movie. It's right there, blatant in your face. And that's not me saying that it's not something that needs to be discussed. I'm just saying that, like you said, they're not shy about what that part of the movie.
The vast majority of it is right there on the surface. I do think there is some subtext, specifically with where the movie ends. Where the metaphor becomes a little bit deeper, a little more interesting to me.
I can't wait to the
but yeah, we'll talk about that in the SIF spoil.
I'm looking forward to this now too. We better get moving.
All right, well, fire up the SIF spoil episode then if you're interested in that as well. Anybody have one last thing to say about Don't Worry, Darling?
No post-credit scene.
Nope, there is none. TT, any final thoughts?
I'm ready to spoil.
All right, we will get there. My final thought is just put Chris Pine in every movie. He's so fun. I love him. All right.
I mean, real quick, that is great casting for that character too. Very handsome, very charismatic man. Like you would believe he would be like a leader of a
Cult
community.
leader. Yeah.
Totally.
And I'd follow him. He's that handsome. I'd go, yeah, he's got to know what he's talking about.
You heard it here first. Andrew will be in
Andrew
Chris Pine
is pro cult.
Yes, yeah, exactly. All right, before we head on to the best ever challenge, just a huge thank you to our SiftPop members. Love you, appreciate you. We are still going through House of Dragon. In the SiftPop member show, we covered a few episodes because of the Fantastic Fest weeks. So if you're interested in that or any of the other fun little things that we do for our members, you can check that out at patreon.com/SiftPop, SiftPop. And thank you so much for doing that. It means the world to us. All right, let's move on to the best ever challenge. We're doing best ever movies with a city in the name in honor of Amsterdam. So we will go number 5 to number 1. And then maybe do some honorable mentions as well. There are plenty of these. TT, why don't you kick us off? What is your number 5?
My number 5, and I'm honored and proud of the idea that there are probably only a handful of people that are going to have seen this film, and that's quite all right. The Polish Brothers, Twin Falls, Idaho.
Oh.
From 1999. I was thrilled with when this opportunity came up to use this title, because it's one of those really random indie titles that I've always kind of loved. I like the Polish Brothers a lot. I also like them, to be quite honest, because they've also worked with Stuart Matthewman from Sade. He's done music for a bunch of their films, and that just felt like a match made in heaven. They've got really weird, quirky sensibilities that all come together. And in this particular case for this film, they play a couple of twins, conjoined twins, whose relationship gets upended when one of them takes interest in a woman. And you kind of get to see what happens, to these two guys as this happens. And more importantly, it's also the fact that the brothers themselves play the twins. So you get this sense as you're watching them, you can completely feel the relationship between them. And to be quite honest, the whole notion of this being that kind of small and intimate a story, it doesn't feel like it could happen anywhere other than Twin Falls. So there you go. That was it for me.
Twin Falls, Idaho. Love it. Andrew, what's your number 5?
Well, it's a Western. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
I'm going to go with 3:10 to Yuma.
That's going to get trumped.
Ooh.
All right. So now for my number 5, which also might get trumped, not sure, because all these movies are so good in my opinion. Grand Budapest Hotel is what I have at number 5.
Very good pick.
Very good pick.
One of my favorite Wes Andersons. I really, in this one so Moonrise Kingdom, when I saw it, I loved immediately. And, hadn't really had that kind of experience with a Wes Anderson movie where I just loved something wholeheartedly immediately. Grand Budapest is the normal Wes Anderson thing. Well, I guess Fantastic Mr. Fox I kind of loved immediately as well. But Grand Budapest is the more common thing for me with Wes Anderson, which is watch it, enjoy it, and then I just can't stop thinking about it. And just can't stop thinking about scenes and performances and have to go back to it. And it's a really fun time, really great performances in an interesting story. So yeah, Grand Budapest is my number 5.
Very good.
On to our number 4s. TT, what is your number 4?
For me, it's ATL.
Okay.
That came out in 2006. We had been in the middle of kind of this whole really weird rediscovery of like skating films and roller skating and what all of that meant. I can't ever really say that I was a huge fan of T.I. as a rapper, but all of a sudden I really enjoyed seeing him in this film. There was something really kind of fun and relaxed about what he was doing it felt completely separate from the persona that we had gotten from him. And really, when I say persona, it's especially with hip hop, it's really all about performance. So this was a completely different performance from him. And one that honestly, I was kind of like, wow, I wish we could see more of these kinds of performances from hip hop artists who, realize that they don't have to be that hardened version that they've presented of themselves to the world. They can do other things. And again, for a guy who can't even roller skate that well, like I said, for me, it still always gets back to the roller skating. Like there's just something about that world. And as a kid growing up, I remember the roller skating rinks and the fun of that time period in that world, and to be able to have a chance to kind of rediscover it. Like I said, even though I wasn't that great a skater, there was just some nostalgia for that kind of took me over the top.
Nice. Andrew, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is all about 4 men, and it takes place in one night in Miami.
That is also my number 4.
Oh, wow. My 4 favorite performances of that year are these guys. I mean, every single one of them is just chewing up scenery. They are just so brilliant. I think Kingsley Ben-Adir and Leslie Odom, the Sam Cooke and Malcolm X dichotomy, just going back and forth. Oh, it's so good. It's so amazing. Regina King she's one of the most talented people in Hollywood. It's so well directed. The opening scene with Aldous Hodges and what's his Beau Bridges is such a unique way of starting off a movie like this, because some people say that they saw where that scene was going immediately, and it caught me off guard. I'll admit, maybe I just had my white blinders on or something, but whenever he's like, "We don't allow in the house," and I was like, oh, okay, because he was praising him and like showing love, I guess, leading up to that, and just talking about, oh, you're going to do great things in college, but then there's that. It's easy and you see it a lot in movies where they paint racism as just blatant, and right there in front of you. But I as a white guy don't see a lot of subtle racism in movies, and I think that this movie does a good job of showing all sides of what it must have been like to have to live in this era. And I think it's a brilliant movie from beginning to end.
One of my favorites. It is essentially a people in a room talking movie, and those are hard to do.
Yes,
and yet it is captivating and compelling, and I think it really is a lot of the nuance and the conversational texture that's going on between these black men in this era. And I just, it was a beautiful experience for me. And I've watched it several times. And again, not something easy to do with the people talking in a room movie where I want to watch it over and over again. But yeah, One Night in Miami is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So. All right, on to our number 3s. TT, what do you got at number 3?
All right, I got. I'm getting a little more conventional as I go along. I'm going to go with Philadelphia at number 3.
Very good pick.
And I go with Philadelphia mainly because I lived in Philadelphia literally at the time that this was made, so I got to leave work and would be doing evening runs after work down in Center City, and got to run by locations as they were shooting this film. So
wait, is everybody from Philadelphia, Boston, or Chicago here? Sorry, reference to Don't Worry, Darling. Apologies to those who didn't see it.
Yeah,
continue.
But so like I said, again, it has a kind of a weird hometowny kind of texture for me in that respect, even though I'm not really from Philadelphia, but I went to school there and spent a lot of time there. So that was great. But there's also the part of me now that, unfortunately, as I think about this film, and I haven't watched it in a minute now, but it's one of those films I feel like I would like to go back to now, because in today's world, I'm not sure that this film gets made in the same way. And that leads to an interesting kind of question, philosophically, like for me, but not just as a critic, but also as an artistic director of a festival that's all about diversity and inclusion. Just the idea that, like I said, I don't think this film gets made with this cast if they were in their primes today. Because of, again, the questions that we would look at in terms of how would you authentically cast, the Tom Hanks character, Antonio Banderas. But does that take away from the work that they gave us in this film, which came out in 1993? Not at all. Right. It's incredible work, and it was an incredibly meaningful film at the time that it came out in, and I'm not sure that means that it shouldn't still have the same kind of meaning even in today's world. Yeah. But I think it's, like I said, I think that's a meaningful kind of question that we need to be looking at and thinking about as we continue moving forward and grappling with all of these issues.
Yeah. Good choice. Andrew, what do you got at number 3?
Well, TT was talking about how Philadelphia would be made differently today. I'm going to talk about a movie that I don't know if it could be made today. Let's go with In Bruges.
Oh, yes. In Bruges. Definitely my honorable mentions.
Yeah. Talk about a movie that doesn't offend a single person, group, country, community, anything at all. It is totally without any...
You mean doesn't fail to offend?
No, I was going sarcastic, but...
Oh, I see. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Yes. This is an insanely offensive movie, but it offends everybody equally. I think this probably is the movie where I was like, oh, so Colin Farrell can act. Like, he's got some acting chops on him. And the chemistry between him and Brendan Gleeson, it makes me so much more excited for the Banshees of Inisherin, or I don't know.
I believe it's the Banshees of Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran's Banshees. Okay,
yeah,
that makes a lot more sense now. Okay. But yeah, their chemistry is so good, and Ray Fiennes swings for the fences with this one. Yeah, I love this movie. It's so funny. I mean, it makes me cry. I laugh so hard every single time. It's so brilliant. And Bruges is so important. Fun fact, I showed this movie to my parents, not knowing how they would think of it. They loved it so much, they took a vacation to Bruges. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a good
Bruges
movie.
Is really, really good. Banshees is also really, really good. So
both Martin McDonagh's, right?
Correct. Yeah. Getting the team back
Mm-hmm.
together. My number 3 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, and I think it's mostly because it's his most optimistic movie. And I really love the characters. I really love the scenes. There are a couple scenes in this movie that Tarantino gives Hitchcock a run for his money. Like with the way he directs tension.
I know what scene you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful stuff. I really enjoy Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. All right, number 2s. What do you got, TT?
Number 2, Vicky Cristina Barcelona.
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, I was, again, and as I think through, some of my favorite Woody Allen films, that later period of his definitely has like the really interesting, meaty, strong material in there. And again, I just love the idea of the cast in this one too. I mean, again, you're getting Javier Bardem, Penelope Cruz, and Scarlett Johansson all together. You've got an Academy Award winner out of the bunch here for a performance here. God, just talk about like one of your sexiest cast ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's it. And, like, you can't go wrong with it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So Woody has proven that, again, that later period, unfortunately, he went through that period and then came out the other end, and we're back to some of the questionable films, and the idea now that it looks like he's finally gonna hang it up. Um, there's definitely a part of me that wishes that he had hung it up, a little sooner, so that we could have had the opportunity to treasure, a film like Vicky Cristina Barcelona. And who knows, maybe there's a teaser for Woody Allen to come for me in this list too.
Oh, interesting. Andrew, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is the 2005 film from Steven Spielberg, Munich.
Definitely my honorable mentions.
It's weird. I think out of all of Spielberg's movies that I can think of right now off the top of my head, this one feels like the least Spielberg-ish movie. It feels more like a Malcolm Mann or a Sam Mendes type of movie. There's that like a low, dull uneasiness through the entire thing. I think Eric Bana is brilliant. There's so many people who are in this movie that you're like, oh, you were in this movie? It's because they weren't big. Like Daniel Craig really wasn't that big of an actor, or Kieran Hines. It's a true story. Obviously, it's about the founding of Israelis Mossad. It's after the Black September attacks on the Munich Olympics, which was just a devastatingly terrible thing that happened. And it's all about this is about revenge. This not for you, but for your country and for your people. But it doesn't shy away from the politics of both sides. It does a really good job of showing, Israel's and then side, and then the what would it be? Not Pakistan, but the
Palestine.
Palestine. Thank you. Yeah, the Palestinians' view on things as well. So, yeah, I think it's a brilliant movie. Tension, perfection. It's great.
Yep, Munich's a good one. Definitely one to check out. My number 2 is Where I Had 3:10 to Yuma.
Okay.
Number 2.
Well, I got that high trumped on a Western.
Yeah, you know me.
I'm getting my card. Getting my card taken.
Yeah, this movie's so good. It's now, Andrew, I guess I should have, before I trumped, I should have said, are you talking about the original?
It's the new one,
okay,
not the 57 one. I'm talking about the Christian Bale.
Yeah,
Russell
because
Crowe.
I assumed you were, but yeah, the Russell Crowe, Christian Bale performances are both amazing. Ben Foster, kind of where I fell in love with Ben Foster.
Oh yeah,
he's so good in this.
It's his best role,
and it's just a compelling mile a minute movie, and I always love watching it. So yeah, 3:10 to Yuma is my number 2.
I think it's the best Western of this century.
The Hotel?
Like
the best Western of this century?
Oh, God. It took me way too long to get that one. But no, I think from 2000 till now, I think that 3:10 to Yuma is the best Western. James Mangold, he understands Westerns. And you can see that in his movies that aren't technically Westerns. Logan feels like a Western. He has a great...
Even Ford v Ferrari has a showdown feel to it.
It really does. Again, Christian Bale giving a great performance. This if you're not a Western fan, and we're going to be talking about another one in a little bit, but I think this is a good one to start, like a good jumping off point into Westerns.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. All right, time for our number 1s. TT, what do you got at the top of the list?
All right, I already signaled that I'm going Woody, and it's Midnight in Paris. Probably for me, as much as I expressed all that love for Vicky Cristina Barcelona, I feel like this is probably the peak for me with Woody. That's 2011. There's this lightness of spirit. It's again, taking Owen Wilson's character as a novelist who's struggling and trying to figure things out. he goes back to the 20s, and all of a sudden you've got this cavalcade of literary icons, artists of all types that he gets to encounter and talk with. And again, part of the fun was in seeing all of these different actors in these roles. Tom Hiddleston, uh, Adrian Brody's in there as Salvador Dali, which the Salvador Dali scene alone is one of those that just always leaves me with a huge smile on my face. In a lot of ways, the issues that I had with Amsterdam, I don't have with this film at all. And they're kind of doing similar kinds of things, but yet there's something about it, the tone, everything kind of holds together. It's also really interesting that it's again, Woody's never necessarily been one for like spending too much time on a story. He's not going to give us these really long films. But the great thing is Midnight in Paris is a pretty hard 94 minutes. It packs a lot in. You get the story, you know where you're supposed to go by the end. And that's just, again, great, sharp storytelling that, again, there's no fat in there at all. So it definitely stands up for me. And it's one of those films I almost kind of wish that, yeah, if he had stopped here, it would have been a great career.
Yeah. Midnight in Paris in at number 1 for TT. Andrew, what do you got at number 1?
You guys know me. I love performances above all else in movies. So I'm going to go with the movie that has 2 of the best actors of all time in it. That's Gangs of New York. Daniel Day-Lewis is who I consider the greatest actor to ever live. The performance he gives in There Will Be Blood is the greatest performance of all time. If in my greatest performances list that I have, if I didn't already have Daniel Day-Lewis once on there already, this would probably be the other movie where I say, yeah, this is one of the greatest performances of all time. Bill the Butcher is such a terrifying character. And it kind of feels like it's very weird, but looking at where they are in their careers at this point, it kind of feels like for a lot of this movie, Daniel Day-Lewis's character Bill is kind of being the mentor to Leonardo DiCaprio's Amsterdam, and it kind of feels like Daniel Day-Lewis is kind of like passing a baton to DiCaprio, like, okay, you can be the greatest actor in the world now if you want. I'm gonna, start to, pull the lever back on my acting career, and the story, well, is so insane. And to think that a lot of what is going on is true, like not the personal stuff, but like the raids on New York to protest civil war and stuff. It's insane. It's Martin Scorsese at his best. Literally, this is a top 5 movie of all time for me.
Gangs of New York in at number 1 for Andrew.
Yes.
My number 1. Is it a cheat? I don't know. I don't think it is. I don't think it's a cheat because I think the intention is in the title. I'm going with La La Land.
Okay, I was going to allow that.
Which is L.A.
Yes.
Which I do think is an intentional.
No, it's 100% intentional.
Oh yeah.
Well, La La Land it's another nickname for Hollywood. So yeah.
Sure. So yeah, I love this movie. It is well known how much I love this movie. I am, until proven otherwise, a Damien Chazelle disciple. I think he makes nothing but incredible stuff. So This is no different. Just not only honoring or homage to old school musicals, but actually managed to pull off a great old school musical himself. The music is great. The performances are great. Emma Stone is just astonishing in this. That audition scene that she does,
both of them
is yes, but actually both of them, you're absolutely correct, are some of the greatest moments in film for me. So yeah, I can't talk about La La Land enough. Love this movie. So that is my number 1.
You're getting a little bit of flack in the chat there, Aaron, for putting La La Land. But I'm on your side. I'm on your side.
Thank you, I
It's a
appreciate it.
brilliant pick and a brilliant movie.
Would it help if I pronounced it LA Land?
There you go.
Would that help?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about honorable mentions.
I have 15. I will let you guys go first, and I will clear it up.
Wow.
Whoa.
Here's the thing. I picked 13 movies that I think are phenomenal. Like brilliant. I didn't just scrape the bottom of the barrel. So.
No, I limit myself to 10. That is the most honorable mentions I will ever write down. Once I get there, I'm just like, we there is a limit. But hey, 15. You do you, Andrew.
But like I said, I'll let you guys go first, and I'll just start taking them off my list as they go.
TT, what do you got? What are some others that you thought of?
Honestly, you guys had films on your list that I was like, yeah, those are, again, In Bruges, Grand Budapest, and again, Andrew, I'm still just as floored as you by One Night in Miami. There's so much to that, and again, you guys already talked about the idea of just how difficult that film is, with the notion of it being people in a room talking. Yeah. And for it to be as engaging as it is, all of the performances are top notch. It feels like at any given time you could sit down and watch that film and just focus on just one of them, and you're gonna get it's a masterclass from each and every one of them. So yeah, for me that was the strongest title for me that didn't make the list, but. Again, I kind of admittedly started off like with the idea that this was going to be kind of an oddball list for me. So but if I had to leave the oddball side of this behind, One Night in Miami might have been number one for me.
Yeah, that was my favorite movie of 2020.
Yeah. Let's see. How about Belfast? I think is worth mentioning. That's a good movie. Straight Outta Compton. I love Straight Outta Compton.
I just rewatched that last week. Holds up, man. It's so good.
It's very, very good. Trial of the Chicago 7, I think, is good.
Yep.
LA Confidential, certainly worth mentioning.
That was like my number 2 almost made my list.
I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. Law Confidential.
Wow.
Fargo. Have to mention Fargo. And Dunkirk, I think, is worth mentioning as well. Great film. Andrew, how many did we tick off of your 15?
I'm down to 11.
All right, let us have it.
Tombstone. That was the other Western, I think.
That
is like a great Western if you've never seen a Western to start off with. 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, a shockingly underrated Michael Bay movie that I think has a lot of heart and a lot of tension. It's really well done. Palm Springs. It's
definitely worth mentioning.
Beverly Hills Cop, Dallas Buyers Club, The Darjeeling Limited. I like that Wes Anderson movie. I'm the only one in the world that does.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
Just maybe the only one here. I don't know.
Gettysburg. If you have 5 hours to watch it, it's great. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I just watched a couple weeks ago a documentary on Hunter S. Thompson, and that guy, he lived a life.
Yes, he did. That is not a lie.
Yeah. Letters from Iwo Jima. I think this is a really good movie. Like, you guys know I'm a Clint Eastwood fanatic, so Rumble in the Bronx. This is my favorite Jackie Chan movie, like out of all of them.
Nice.
Yeah. And then finally, Selma.
Good choices. Very nice. All right, that'll take us into our buried treasure. What is that one thing in any area of pop culture that you want to make sure people know about? I will kick us off. Worked my way through a Hulu original recently, and really, really enjoyed it. So I wanted to pass it along. It's been out for a while, so it's probably something that has faded into the background if you didn't watch it when it was first came out. But this is Andrew Garfield in Under the Banner of Heaven. This is a story of a Mormon police officer in Utah and his non-Mormon partner as they kind of dig in not only to a murder mystery, so to speak, but also into how the religion of Mormonism has impacted this, specifically fundamental Mormonism, has impacted this case and what happened with this murder. It's about a Mormon family who had some of their family members descend into extreme Mormon views. And it's really fascinating on a couple levels for me. I think, first of all, the performances are astonishing, and the story itself is worth paying attention to. But it's also fascinating on the exploration of Mormonism and its foundations, its beliefs, those kind of things. It's a very young religion, relatively speaking. I think Joseph Smith started it in the mid 1800s, early 1800s. So, we're just looking at a couple hundred years.
Joseph Smith was a prophet.
It has existed. So I found all of that very fascinating and very interesting to kind of dive into. Also, Daisy Edgar Jones in there as well, who I love. Sam Worthington, who's going to be back in the spotlight here with the Avatar movies coming out. Again, doing really good work in this. Rory Culkin is great in this. Wyatt Russell, who we've seen recently in a few things, is really doing some really great work here. So yeah, great cast, great performances, really interesting story. If Under the Banner of Heaven kind of missed you, it's a really good true crime kind of exploration. So you might want to check it out.
It's interesting because this is written, and an episode, I'm assuming the pilot, is directed by Dustin Lance Black, who I was first introduced to his work whenever he wrote Milk, the Sean Penn movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this sounds like it doesn't sound like the thing that I would have expected him to write, but you have piqued my interest because I do remember when this came out, and it was one of those, do I start this? Do I not?
Yeah.
And I'd never heard anybody say anything about it. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll just pass on it then.
Yeah, I'm finally starting to be able to work my way through some of the stuff, some of the prestige TV kind of stuff that I missed over the spring and in summer. So this was one that I threw on and wanted to let people know about. So
well, that sounds nice because I am backlogged on so much TV.
You can't help it. There's too much.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too much.
Yeah.
Andrew, what do you got for your buried treasure?
I am going to go with a HBO show that came out all the way back in 2016 called The Young Pope.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never seen it before, but I started watching it. Now I'm not done, and I know that there's like another miniseries after it called The New Pope, which I haven't seen, obviously. But holy crap, this might be some of the best writing I've ever seen for a television show. The way this tackles the Catholic Church, and I'm glad I've started watching this after I've watched the two popes, the Anthony Hopkins, and I forget the other gentleman's name. Forgive me. I'm glad I watched it after that because that movie kind of dabbled into the political aspects of the Roman Catholic Church, and it's something that I didn't expect it to tackle, but this show does it, forgive the pun, but I think it does it with grace. Like it doesn't make a mockery of the church, which at least as somebody who isn't Catholic, I don't see it as intentionally trying to be blatantly, a bashing of the church, but the political aspect mixed with the theological aspect is so fascinating. And this new pope coming in with the radical ideas. By the way, Jude Law, brilliant. Oh, he's so good in this show. Just seeing his views. And it's funny because you would expect a young pope coming in to the church to have, new fundamental new age ideas. And he ends up being like the exact opposite. He's more along the lines of what we'd expect of a pope in the medieval times. He's like very stringent to the word of God. And I think the performances by him and Diane Keaton are perfection. And I also love James Cromwell as well in this.
Nice.
So
yeah, I've heard nothing but good things. By the way, Jonathan Pryce played the other Pope in the Two Popes.
Thank you. That's right.
Yes.
Let people know that. TT, you are our guest. Finish us out. What is your
All
buried
right.
treasure?
My buried treasure is kind of a weird choice because it's actually not the film itself that's the buried treasure. It's the subject that's the treasure, and it's going to be obvious. But it's the new Apple Apple Plus movie, Sydney. I was able to catch Sydney at the Toronto International Film Festival, the opening night screening there. It was one of those special moments, of course. You've got Oprah who comes out on stage to help introduce the film. She tells us she hasn't come out and done anything in front of an audience like this since COVID, but she's like, of course, I'm going to come here and do it for Sydney because she loved him so much. She's a producer of the film. A good chunk of the film is based on interviews that she did with him that she handed over to the team that was putting this together. Reginald Hudlin as director, and then his entire team. So it's amazing. And the film itself, obviously, is tackling an icon. But again, like I said, the thing that has happened for me since seeing it in Toronto and then actually coming home and watching it with my wife on Apple TV is the conversations that I've had since then with people of kind of our generation who had not seen some of those classic Sidney Poitier films. So that, like I said, really the treasure is in seeing this and then kind of looking back and thinking, well, wait a minute, I haven't seen Lilies of the Field or The Defiant Ones, or even moving ahead to, Uptown Saturday Night and Let's Do It Again. And, it barely gets mentioned at the end of the film, but he also directed Stir Crazy. So all of a sudden, like I said, the treasure is in really kind of going back and saying, well, if I haven't seen these films, maybe I need to go spend the time, digging into the filmography of this iconic guy. Because again, what you're going to see is this incredible look at pretty much everything that we would think about in terms of film as a whole. I mean, he's going to give you the strong, dramatic kind of presence. He was also, we've come to recognize, an incredibly funny and humane person as well. And again, all of those aspects of who he was they end up either when he's in front of the camera or when he's working behind the camera. So like I said, yeah, that the idea of the treasure is in just making sure that you go back. And if you haven't seen some of those iconic films, yeah, this is it. That opens that treasure chest for you that you can spend, a good bit of time kind of really looking at it and really appreciating American cinema as a whole.
Nice.
Well, I had no idea that there was a Sidney Poitier documentary out, and now that I do, I'm going to watch it as soon as we're done here.
Nice.
I love that guy. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, he tells a lot of stories in there, and again, it's great because you're getting the stories directly from him, which is another really special and poignant kind of piece of what they do in the film. So have fun with it.
Yeah, sounds amazing. That is Sydney. It is on Apple TV Plus. The Young Pope you can find on HBO Max, and Under the Banner of Heaven is available on Hulu. Well, congratulations to all of us. We did a podcast. Well
Woo!
done.
Yeah.
We have met our goals. Let's celebrate together the meeting of such goals. Thanks so much for joining us today. SiftPop is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Big thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
And thank you to TT for hanging out with us today. Where would you like people to check you out online?
You can go to terrencetodd.com. That's the easy place to find everything. And I would say you can go to Twitter at TT Sternenzy, but I don't really put much out there. So yeah, Twitter's probably not the place to find me. Go to the blog, ttsternenzy.com. You'll get it all.
Nice. There you go. We appreciate you, TT. Always good to have you on. Hope to have you on again soon. Much love and gratitude to our SiftPop members for giving monthly to make SiftPop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month. You get access to bonus episodes at certain levels, as well as some other fun perks. Find out more at patreon.com/SiftPop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to leave a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You can even email us, feedback@siftpop.com, if you want to send us an email. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too. So let them know about it and that listening is much easier than seeing that amazing meal you cooked thrown on the floor. So, that's just a difficult thing. We'll be back next week, I think, with Halloween Ends and probably something else as well. And we will see you then. Hey, listen, I don't set the schedule of movies. We got to do what we got to do. Okay. At least it's going to end, apparently. At least it's going to end.
It's never going to end. Never.
I just started having Vietnam flashbacks of last year when we had to sit through that Halloween atrocity. Kills.
Yeah. Maybe this one will be amazing. We will see you then. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to those who've been watching the live video. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Lolly, always great to see you in the chat. Yes, punctuation is important. I agree.
Don't worry, darling.
But no one is going to keep me from loving on La La Land. Not even a few punctuation pieces. Jay Bourgeois, always good to see you hanging out. Computer Geek 660 says haven't seen Amsterdam, but it looks like another average Oscar bait movie. I don't know. The whole Oscar bait thing,
it's not going to get any nominations.
I mean, it might, but even if it does or doesn't, I don't know. I'm kind of over the Oscar bait kind of. Just let people make movies. If they're looking for awards, that's fine. I don't know. Gonk saying congratulations on the top 25 TT. That's awesome. So
Thank you.
With us. Polly Walnut says too many actors can spoil the movie. Seems that's what's going on here. Possible. Lolly says like Cats. Maybe.
Yes, maybe. Very comparable to Cats.
Yes. Original title was Catsterdam, actually, but many people don't know that. All right, guys, we will catch you next time we're live. Bye.
Bye.